What is up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of our NFL DFS DraftKings Advice videos. This time for Week 15. We are getting deep into the season, have a ridiculous amount going on with injuries and COVID news. But I am your host, Justin Bales, joined by Matt, who is just coming off of a phenomenal few weeks. Insane season for him. But Matt, how are you doing right now?
Yeah, it's hard to complain, man. I'm doing great. Like you said, it's been a crazy season. I've just been dialed in, I guess. I had as the Discord knows, a couple of weeks ago I had COVID, so I had just like extra time to just do nothing but prep for the slate. Shipped like 72K. That was fun. And that was like my third week of like 50K or higher, basically this year. Just been a crazy heater this year. And when you have something like that happen, you try to keep yourself in check. That like, hey, you're not that good. Don't get too high on yourself because so much has to go right for your players, and so much has to go wrong for the players you don't roster. You got to fade everything. You got to smash everything you do play. And so, yeah, on one hand, I'm certainly happy, and I'm happy with where my process is at. I really feel good about it, of course. But of course, a lot of things got to go your way to actually ship stuff like that. So, but I'm not complaining. I'm excited. Kind of a crazy week this week, so I'm looking forward to dissecting the news. One thing that Ben says a lot is that he says something like, I trust myself to dissect the news better than the field, that type of thing, where, parsing through what's signal, what's noise, what's real, who should we be actually playing based on the news that breaks. So I think that could be one of those weeks where you get dialed in, you keep your head on the news, and we'll figure out the way come Sunday.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm joined by the humblest man in all of DFS. The guy wins well over $100,000 and says, "I'm not that good." All right. Hey, however you want to do it. This slate is interesting. I will say, just on first glance, I actually don't love it that much. It's not my favorite slate that we've had. I think that you do have a point about there being plenty of news that's coming in. Obviously, COVID is wrecking the NBA. It's wrecking the NFL. A lot of stuff's happening. Some games in the NBA actually being postponed and stuff.
Yeah.
I believe they said earlier that the Rams have 21 players on the COVID list. I mean, the Browns team has been decimated. We have guys, Jalen Waddle today has been ruled out already. Case Keenum, backup quarterback after Baker Mayfield tested positive. He tests positive. Now they're down to Nick Mullins on Saturday. On top of all of that, we do have Saturday games, which means that we only have an 11-game slate on Sunday because they've shifted the games around, which is kind of similar to just another bye week, basically, in terms of fantasy. So, I mean, plenty to happen. Before we dive in, you can find all of our content at dfskarma.com. We have plenty of free articles. You can also grab a core plays package where you can get our premium articles. That's where you can get into our premium Discord, all of our core plays. You get our projections, all the good stuff with that. Or go to chatdfs.com and you can get into our free Discord as well, where you don't have to pay to be in. But all of the links that you could possibly need are down below in the description. So just click the little show more. On top of that, if you enjoy the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the bell to turn on the notifications, and then you can leave any comments that you have for the week below. Matt and myself will get to them as we can throughout the week because a lot of news is going to be changing. So this is a good opportunity for you guys to ask any questions or anything that you want to know down below, and we will try to answer them to the best of our abilities. Starting at quarterback this week, though, in cash games, you can tell me if I'm crazy, but it seems pretty concentrated to you either spend up on Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, if I'm choosing one of the two, personally, Kyler Murray, or if Jalen Hurts is in and a full go, you probably shift down to Jalen Hurts because he's just way underpriced, essentially, for his talent. Is that how you see cash games going this week, or do you think that they're going to do something weird like Tua Tagovailoa?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I was waiting for the Tua name because I was, I'm thinking a lot of people are going to play Tua. Maybe, with the Waddle news coming out, people will be a bit less enthused about it. Certainly that's been his top target, throughout the year. But I think people are going to want to play a lot of high-end wide receivers, not a lot of high-end wide receivers, but we'll get to them. There's a couple. And I think you will see a fair amount of Tua. But yeah, I think certainly. But then Kyler's got the same types of bruises. He's got no D hop now,
Mhm.
so his top target. I mean, it's hard to call him his top target this year. He hasn't played much, and when he has, it's been spread out. But no D hop certainly could pull a bit of ownership away from Kyler. Josh Allen in a potential blowout, huge spread game. We don't know. He lost Manny Sanders, but that's probably a good thing overall to that offense. So yeah, I mean, I could see it going a few different ways. I think probably you're right. You're looking Kyler or Josh Allen. Oddly enough, I'm kind of on this string of just kind of zigging when others are zagging. Again, it's been working, but I want to know your thoughts on, I think, my favorite quarterback play of the week, who also is missing one of his top targets in OBJ. But I love Stafford this week, man. The Seattle team is not good at all. And they're also facing the second most pass attempts per game behind only Tampa Bay. And if you are playing, LA, well, LA wants to just pass it all game as well. Look at their pass rates above expectation. Look at all their data in the red zone. Their passing team, they have some questions at running back as well. So I think that, missing OBJ is not great. But I mean, he didn't have OBJ up until a few weeks ago, right? I mean, obviously he had Robert Woods, but I love Stafford this week. I think, I'm going to be playing Cooper Kupp, of course, and I don't hate just pairing him up with Stafford. It's a great matchup, too. We'll get to the individual matchups in the other positions. But I personally, with the team total at home, great matchup. Seattle is a team that creates a lot of pass attempts against them. There could be some back and forth. There's no back and forth between Arizona and Detroit. There's no back and forth between Buffalo and Carolina. So if there's at least a chance that Russ can be efficient, there's another quarterback missing one of his top targets, and Tyler Lockett, who's got COVID. That's kind of the theme this week. But I think that, I think Seattle's at least decent, and they can put some points on the board and make Stafford throw it even a bit more. So what are your thoughts on Stafford? Have you considered him up until this point, or not really?
Stafford is probably my number one GPP quarterback play of the week. So I mean, glad to hear you. And the one of the reasons that I'm on him is more kind of game theory here type situation, because everyone's playing Cooper Kupp, right? Like we'll get to that at receiver, but everyone's playing Cooper Kupp. The big reason is Seattle leads the league in yards after the catch allowed. Obviously, Cooper Kupp can do a lot of damage in that situation. Mm-hmm. No one's playing Stafford, though. If Kupp is going to play as well as everyone anticipates he does, which I personally believe that he does, it's highly likely that Stafford also has a big game, not to mention, obviously Van Jefferson has taken a relatively large leap forward this season. I think people are slightly scared off of the no Odell. But when you look at that offense,
Higbee's back now.
Yeah, that's you have Higbee. On top of that, one of the bigger things for Higbee that I believe is that it was a false positive. So he's not dealing with any effects of actually having COVID at this time.
Yep.
So that offense should be relatively smooth sailing, and Stafford's going to be the guy that throws it just because, Sean McVay loves to sling the ball around, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no question. I love the play. I would just, of course, Kyler and Josh, they can do it with their legs as well. And I got to key in a little bit more on those games and look at more injury news that pops up, more matchup stuff. It's still a bit early in the week, and this week more than ever, I've kind of toned down my research up until this point because there's just so much news we're waiting on. But I'm as an early look, and I don't play much cash, so to be fair, I typically pay maybe now lately about maybe 25% of my volume in cash and leave the 75 for GPPs. And I'll just toss my favorite GPP lineup, that I'm playing in high dollar small field stuff in cash. Like, I don't care. Like, I know Stafford won't be a cash quarterback. Who cares? Like, especially a quarterback, it's such a tight distribution of points anyway. So I'm kind of zeroing in on Stafford, but it's going to be some work between Josh Allen and Kyler Murray looking at those two. Obviously, you got to love Kyler in the dome. We'll see. Yeah, and I love a lot of his position players too. So we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Let me ask you one thing that I was kind of considering for Kyler Murray and going back and forth on. Mm-hmm. If James Conner's out, boost to Kyler, just assuming that he's going to get goal line carries over Chase Edmonds.
That's a great point. I mean, he loves running inside the 5. Like last year, it was crazy. Started off a little bit that way this year, then he was hurt and all that. But yeah, dude, no Connor, you got to love him a lot more. Totally. Yeah, especially because Edmonds is not the, put it in his belly at the 3-yard line. They'd rather just go, 3 or 4 wide shotgun at the 3 and let him roll out and run it in if he wants to on an option. But so yeah, that's a great point. I will mention one more since this is a GPP show. Man, it feels kind of gross, but if you look at Jimmy G, what he's been able to do these last few weeks, it's hard to ignore it. The matchup is awesome. But here's the thing: I would only play Jimmy G if Eli Mitchell sits. Okay, if Eli Mitchell plays, they're going to put the ball in his belly like 27 times, and good luck, right? Because Jimmy G needs volume, some volume at least. And Atlanta is just an unbelievable matchup. They are the dead last pass rush in creating pressure in the league. And you have San Fran with really good pass blocking efficiency metrics. So I think that, he'll have all day to pass. I was big on this matchup when Brady got to play in Atlanta just a couple weeks ago. I was all over Godwin. He had like 15 catches. And we'd be looking at Ayuk. We'd be looking at Kittle. But I'm totally willing to just shut that all down as an idea if Eli Mitchell plays. We already saw that Jeff Wilson just doesn't have the juice this year. In spot starts in the last couple of years, he was just ripping it up, but he just doesn't have it this year. I thought the first spot start he got, Jimmy G missed him wide open in the end zone, just literally threw it over his hands. I'm thinking, so maybe that's just a bad game. Well, then obviously he kind of crapped the bed against Cincy, and his next spot start was that last week. So I think if Eli Mitchell, you could say never mind. If no Eli, I'm going to dial up some Jimmy G stacks just because the matchup is so strong against Atlanta.
I think that's sharp. So my thing is that I just literally never want to play Jimmy Garoppolo.
I get it.
But I was kind of moving. If I was going to play in that range, I was going to play Tua. If he's gaining steam and he's gaining ownership, I will easily just move to Garoppolo if Mitchell's out.
Dude, Tua doesn't run, right? Not much case for a big back and forth game, in that matchup. And he just lost his top pass catcher. So why would you play Tua in any GPP if you could play Jimmy G if there's no Eli Mitchell? Again, I think that's really important for the game theory there. Atlanta is coughing up the second most pass attempts a game over the last 3. They're bottom 10 in the league on the year. You want to pass against them, and again, they have literally no pass rush. They're dead last. So it's just something that if you give Jimmy G time at home with Debo, with Kittle, with Ayuk coming around with over 10 targets last week, game-winning touchdown, you can find some pieces there, and I think it might be a little bit sneaky.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Only one more guy that I want to discuss here very quickly. Aaron Rodgers' price is up to 7,500. There are concerns based on the way that the season started early. Obviously he didn't necessarily go off all that much, but he returned against Seattle, did not look great in that game. Since then, 36.5, 29, and basically 33 fantasy points, obviously coming off of the massive game against Chicago. And now he gets a game that Green Bay's in a spot where they can't really rest starters. They can't give guys breaks. They have to play their hardest because there's such big splits between them and Tampa Bay at home and on the road that essentially whoever gets home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and then obviously Arizona's there, they don't have the major splits. If Green Bay or Tampa Bay gets the home field advantage throughout the playoffs, they're probably favored to make the Super Bowl. And then I think you can have the argument of who wins the Super Bowl, but they're probably favored to win the NFC. So at this point in time, Green Bay really does need all the big wins that they can get. Baltimore struggling with a little injuries. You have Lamar Jackson and everything, but looks like he should suit up, which kind of gives them a little more firepower on offense. So how do you feel about Aaron Rodgers, especially because people still, we're heading into week 15 and people still don't realize that you can attack Baltimore secondary, which is really strange because, they're giving up the second most air yak in the NFL in the entire season.
Yeah.
They really struggle with yards after the catch. Second most, I believe at this point, maybe third most at this point. Regardless, they're in the bottom 5 of yards after the catch allowed per game. The big question mark that I have here is that obviously Green Bay's receiving group just isn't all that good, but it never really has been, and it hasn't ever seemed to matter for Aaron Rodgers. And you still do have Davante Adams. Aaron Jones, I know I believe he's missed practice today and yesterday because he's sick. It's not
Mhm.
COVID, which would assume that he's going to play come Sunday. Also has the knee injury that they've been giving Dylan more carries.
Yeah.
That essentially just means that if they're going to get Aaron Jones touches in a close game, they're likely going to get them through the air, which is going to help Aaron Rodgers anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah,
are
man.
you interested in him? Because his price is now, pretty
Yeah.
high. I believe it's the highest it's been on the
Yeah.
entire season.
I mean, I almost just won, 6 figures playing Deontay Johnson against this secondary, right? 2 weeks ago, right? I mean, I played Justin Jefferson and Deontay Johnson. Those were the two just total nut spots. And this Baltimore secondary is a problem. It was already not good. Now they have literally 0 starters from the defensive backfield that was starting on game 1 as far as this week, right? So the safeties, the corners, they're all gone. And it's just not good, man. They're giving up the most passing plays of 20 or more yards in the league. They also give it up in a kind of a pass funnel way. They have a DVOA via the pass at 26, but against the run, they're number 4. So I think that with their big plays that they like to give up, I think that you'd be fine with doubles. I mean, look, MVS is free, right? So effectively, was he 4.9? I think this week. Yeah, 4.9. I know he's a little banged up with a back injury, but he gets those shots every week. He had 25 DK points a few weeks ago. He had a touchdown earlier in the year. He was out for like a 6-game span, but yeah, I think MVS is exciting. Pairing with Davante Adams, I think that Rodgers is comfortable outdoors. It doesn't matter. I think that's a great spot, and that's similar to the Stafford call. A lot of people are going to play Davante, but they're not necessarily going to stack him up with a super efficient and talented quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. So I think that's a great call. And I think with that, in both of those spots, I'm not so many people force the whole double stacks and then do a bring back, which is just so, I don't know, man. It's just such groupthink. There's not there's some metrics showing that can get in the top 1/10% for the milli, but okay, how many of those people are putting massive volume in the milli? Well, not many, right? They're playing in 3 max. Well, then why are you doing Yahtzee tournament strategies in the 3 max or single entry? It's stupid. You don't need to double with the bring back every week. It's so stupid. There's some pretty high level names in our industry that that's all they talk about. It's okay. But after saying that, I do for someone like Stafford or Rodgers to really crush since they don't really do it with their legs, you're going to need a lot of production from them, which means what? There's going to be a lot of production to go around with the pass catchers. So I think that you don't have to double stack with a Josh Allen, with a Kyler Murray, with Jalen Hurts, right? Even maybe with a Tua. But I think you should with an A-Rod or Stafford in these spots, especially since the secondary options are free. You can go Higbee, who's top 10 in the NFL in red zone looks, and he's missed multiple weeks, right? You can go MVS with the deep shots that he's inevitably going to get against a team that's giving up the most deep pass completion. So yeah, I love that idea. That's a great one for sure. I'll be looking at some Aaron Rodgers this week.
I like that we're on the same page. Quarterbacks we have nailed. Moving to running back, which for me personally feels a little more up in the air. I don't necessarily know if it's overly chalky. Not to say that there won't be chalk here. I think we can both agree that James Robinson, now that Urban Meyer's been fired, his price is down to 5,400. We just watched Rashad Penny just go insane on the Houston Texans last week. James Robinson is the chalk. He's too cheap. I completely agree. I'm relatively fine with you playing him in tournaments, but I don't believe that he's even close to really a must. Where you're just locking him into the lineups or anything. You can definitely
be a must play, right? And that offense with that team total, right. It's a good play. It's free.
Yeah, just way too cheap. Outside of that, who do you think the other chalkier options are? I would assume Myles Gaskin probably gets some. If Chase Edmonds or James Conner's out, the other one probably gets some. It just kind of depends a little bit, but what are the chalkier options you think
there's so many contingencies like you're talking about. Eli Mitchell will be quite chalky if he plays. We don't know. I mean, he's very questionable with the concussion in the knee. James Conner would totally be chalky if he plays, especially if Edmonds sits again. I think in reverse, if Conner sits but Edmonds suits up, Edmonds will be chalk. He's like 5,100. You go to LA. Is Henderson going to come back? Well, if he doesn't, Sony Michel, people are going to fire him up. Seattle's got a terrible run D. And it goes in reverse. If Henderson suits up, I don't know if I would say he'd be chalk, but he'd get a lot of looks. I mean, he's 5,900 for Darrell Henderson in that offense at that team total at home. You got to love it. You're right. I think if Myles Gaskin comes back, that's the best matchup in the NFL on the ground is the Jets. Problem is Miami is the historically horrible offensive line. I mean, it's a top, or I should say a bottom 3 offensive line in the history of football since they've been looking at most of these efficiency metrics. So it's brutal. Could he fall in twice like he did a couple weeks ago? Yeah, maybe. But I think he'd get some run if he does in fact come off COVID list. So other than that, I think there's going to be some Najee Harris exposure there just because you look at the top and there's not much else. I mean, there goes my lights. There you go. Saquon, it's like, maybe. But, I mean, no one's playing Zeke. He's got a bum knee. Just doesn't look good whatsoever. Pollard might be coming back. Mixon in this spot on the road against Denver, not really. He's losing passing work to Samaje Perine. I think that Najee might get some run. The problem is Tennessee is more of a pass funnel, really quite strong against the run and really brutal against the pass, especially in the secondary. So I think that Najee could pick it up just because of his incredible amount of volume. And I don't hate it. I actually don't. At home for Pittsburgh. Are they coming off a mini bye or a real bye? It's a mini bye. So they played Minnesota last Thursday. So they're coming off 10 days rest at home. I could get behind some Najee exposure. Again, knowing it's not a great matchup, but he gets all the pass work too. So it's about it. That's about it. You're looking at Najee up top, and then you're going to be looking at all these little contingencies of like who's in, who's out, almost like the annoying NBA DFS style where it's like all about usage and whether hurt or not. God, yeah. So I think you kind of got to wait on news. As far as my like early leans or like favorites, they're kind of what you already mentioned. I'll be looking to Arizona for sure. That matchup against Detroit's wonderful. Teams just run and run and run on Detroit. They get to play in a dome, which is friendly for them. That's where they play at home as well. I'll be looking to LA. More excited probably if Henderson sits. I'd like Michelle. I wouldn't be excited about Gaskin. I don't know. We'll see. And then James Robinson. It's a kind of throw up in your mouth type of plays this week.
It's bad.
The presser today from Daryl Bevel. He went out of his way to mention and to make sure that they want to feed James Robinson in this game coming up here. Again, it's kind of a nut matchup against Houston. They have believe it or not, a much better O-line from adjusted line yards, from yards before contact than Seattle. And like you mentioned, Rashad Penny just ran all over them last week out of nowhere. So this is just a really brutal spot as far as their defense against the run for Houston. So I think, Robinson's up there. But nothing I'm incredibly excited about. Eli Mitchell, I guess. But yeah, man, it's an interesting week. I think I heard on the cash process, AC and Benz, it's a 4 wide receiver week. Do you tend to agree with that?
Yeah, I agree because I think you outlined it extremely well with essentially everything that you've just said. I think that you basically hit the nail on the head. There's 2 other plays that I'm considering for tournaments, and neither one of them really get me that excited. They're both guys that are going to go under owned because they split carries. And anytime you're dealing with running backs that split carries, it just adds inherent risk to anything that they do. If they don't fall into the end zone, they could be screwed. If, for some reason someone else gets the hot hand, it's a problem. The one is Javonta Williams, which crazy to me at this point that Melvin Gordon is still taking the snaps. But when you look at what the Broncos,
that's what's crazy.
Yeah. Well, last week, everyone was like, there's no way that the Broncos give Melvin Gordon the ball after Javonta Williams broke out without him. And then Melvin Gordon had 22 carries for well over 102 touchdowns last week.
Yep.
I mean, Williams still did fine, but it's just that kind of thing that really hurts him. And then the other one, and man, I can't believe that I'm even considering it, would be D'Onta Foreman. If he's going to get some red zone looks, if he's going to get the majority of the carries, I do think that the matchup against Pittsburgh is completely fine. His price tag is still down around 5,000, and that's more or less because he's splitting carries. It's a deep GPP play, in my opinion. It's not something that you want to run if you're running only one lineup on the week. You don't really want to use someone like D'Onta Foreman. But do you think that either one of them should at least be considered? I guess because they are pretty gross plays.
That's funny, man. I've been looking at D'Onta Foreman all week, and I'm like, why am I looking at it? And I'm kind of like, I'm trying to check myself because it's it's not exciting, but he's not horrible. It's a three-way situation. That's kind of problematic, of course, with Hilliard and McNichols. Road team, not a big team total, but the Pittsburgh run is pretty brutal. Surprisingly, they got a good front seven, but it's more about rushing the passer and creating havoc. So, it's one of those. Here's the thing. I think it's one of those plays that you could talk about, but you're probably not going to play it. Chase Edmonds is $100 less. You got Robinson a couple $100 more than that. You got even guys like Devontae Freeman. We'll look at that as an option potentially. Miles Sanders, depending if Jordan Howard comes. There's so many other plays around there that you're probably going to float to before you actually click that button on Foreman. But I get it. Javonta Williams, yeah, man, that's like that's a sneaky play. I think that you could totally look for kind of almost. I mean, he had a great game last week. I wouldn't call it flop lag. I mean, he did do well last week, but just kind of bet on talent, bet on the situation. I don't hate that at all. At home against a Cincy team after a brutal overtime loss, traveling to Denver, Mile High, I could see Javonta getting loose, and he's going to come in at like no ownership. So I definitely don't hate that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to me, running back is just pretty bare this week. Like even the good plays kind of make you throw up in your mouth a little bit.
Yeah.
But wide receiver is, significantly better. This is an interesting week, I'll say. I think we all know that the number one receiver that you're just clicking into your lineups is probably going to be Cooper Kupp. The number two most likely will be Davante Adams. I think you can probably make the argument that Steph Diggs can be the number two above Adams if your quarterback is Josh Allen, because obviously you can't play the three of those. And for me, Cooper Kupp sits, not necessarily well above, but he's the clear wide receiver one above Davante Adams at this point. Yep. But then you have plenty of salary relief there. You have Gabriel Davis, who obviously if Emmanuel Sanders isn't playing, Gabriel Davis kind of steps into the bigger role. You have Devontae Parker, who was already projecting to be relatively chalky, and now no Jalen Waddle. So there's the high-priced guys, but there's also the very cheap guys. I guess if you want to add someone even like Laquan Treadwell, he's 3,300 and getting plenty of targets. He's actually producing relatively well with them. So I guess the big concern would be obviously the new coaching. If, someone likes Laviska Shenault more than Urban Meyer hated him, maybe this is finally the time that he breaks out, right? So what are you looking at for wide receiver? And I'm assuming you agree that, the two at the very top that you like the most are Cooper Kupp and Davante Adams.
Yeah, those are definitely my 1 and 2. I think that on talent, sure, you should be mentioning Stephon Diggs next. I would rather play Deontay for a fair amount less in what I believe to be probably a better matchup. Tennessee teams are passing on Tennessee at the third highest rate. Brutal coverage grades, injuries in the secondary, COVID stuff. I mean, I think Deontay is just set up yet again this week. He's going to get double-digit targets in a really good spot, 10 days rest. Again, teams want to throw against them, and Pittsburgh wants to throw too. So I definitely like Deontay even more than Diggs. I'm not going to force anything with the Jacksonville guys. I understand. Trevor Lawrence he's really struggling, man. It's just not anything I really want to get behind. The guy's like one touchdown in the last, 7 or 8 weeks to like 6 picks. So it's just not anywhere I really want to spend salary on it, especially if I'm going to be having some exposure to James Robinson, and the way you beat Houston is on the ground. One of the plays, I'll go through a few that I'm really most excited about, which is so not like me, but I love when I have a play that I like that is not like me, and it's not someone I played all year, because I love that, because then it's just about it being an objectively good play, and I can tell that I'm not using any kind of heuristics or shortcuts of going to find my guys in my comfort zone, and I'm just really having a good process, and that's Brandon Cooks this week. Last couple of weeks, I started putting him in the slot more, which just is just good coaching. He's awesome efficiencies out of the slot. The guy's so quick twitch. He just gets open, man. He's so good. He got stopped at the 2-inch line last week. Had that not happened, he would have had tons of catches, 100+ yards, and a touchdown. And what? So if the guy fell forward by 3 more inches, he'd be way more owned. Yeah, he would, which it makes no sense. It's stupid. But Jacksonville's giving up the highest completion percentage in the league. They are brutal out of the slot. We saw production against Houston. Who did Houston play? I'm drawing a blank last week. Was it Seattle last week?
Yeah, Tyler Lockett went crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Lockett went off. He had some slot routes there. So I think that Cooks is in such a good spot. We actually seen Davis Mills throw for 300 or more yards 2 out of the last 3 games. I'm not saying he's great, but he's chucking it 45+ times. He's got, he's getting the yardage there. They're giving Nico Collins some more run. That's one thing you got to look for late in the year, any season. A lot of these teams that have nothing to play for, but spent some draft capital on some of these young, talented guys, they might start kind of forcing some looks towards them more than they even deserve, just to kind of see what they have in them. Nico Collins is a bit of a threat, I suppose, to some of Cook's volume, but the volume's there, man, and the matchup is just unbelievable. I mean, Jacksonville just gets destroyed out of the slot, and again, highest completion percentage in the league, giving it up, tied with the Jets, which goes to your Devontae Parker take. Parker's route tree was nowhere near as high percentage as Waddle, but now you get a matchup where, again, highest completion percentage in the league allowed, naturally going to be finding more success. And Tua's had a really high completion percentage himself. His metrics have been pretty good, and they're kind of low ADOT looks this year. They're not, no big time throws to speak of. But I think Devontae Parker, that's good chalk, I'd say, overall. Again, their run game is just so brutal. So and the Jets are totally devoid of any talent in the secondary. So I like that. Of course, I love Cooper Kupp. He's one of my favorite players for many years before it was cool to like Cooper Kupp. I mean, the guy was literally the greatest college receiver in the history of college football. He literally was breaking Jerry Rice's records. I mean, yeah, it was Division II. I don't care. I mean, the guy is so freakishly skilled. He does like these high percentage routes, but instead of like a Waddle where it's like 4 yards up the field, it's like 15 yards up the field, and he's just wide open. So Cooper Kupp gets Ugo Amadi this week, and this is a converted free safety. Okay, 4th round draft pick out of a few years ago. He's almost a half a foot shorter than Cooper Kupp. That just gets destroyed out of the slot. It's man. I mean, including Cooks last week, out of the slot. So it's just Cooper Kupp. I'll just play him in every lineup. And by the way, he's chalk, but he's not going to be more than like 30% owned in most contests, 30 to 35 maybe. So it's like, okay, you're just printing 65% equity there. It's just a smash now with no Odell, because if you saw Odell's route tree last week, they're not just chucking it deep like they did in Green Bay when they first, he didn't have much of the playbook, so they're just kind of chucking him deep looks. Well, no, he was getting some nice slant work, some outs, so now he's out. And what is Van Jefferson doesn't do much. He's more of just a go route type of guy. So it's going to be a lot of Cooper Kupp action in this game. A few more plays, and I'll throw it back to you. Hard not to like DK Metcalf this week at that price in a back and forth matchup. Rams is not the best matchup in the world, but now there's no Lockett. He had a big touchdown call back to holding last week. He got stopped inside the 5 the week before. DK's been so close to just erupting. And I think in a game where you're going to have to pass a ton, both teams are going to be passing a ton. Hard not to like DK just on volume alone and talent alone. I mentioned Deontay. I love the spot for Deontay. I love Gabriel Davis this week. He might get overlooked with this Devontae Parker news, but it's like, who would you rather have? Josh Allen throwing to Gabe Davis, or Tua throwing to Parker? Probably Gabe Davis. I mean, this team loves him. He's athletic. He's a little bit bigger than the rest of the wide receivers in that crew. And they give him red zone looks, even when he wasn't getting much run as far from a snap perspective. But last week, Manny Sanders goes down, and a lot of looks came to Gabe Davis, including in the red zone. He had 2 straight touchdowns in 2 games now. I love Gabe Davis at 3.7. It's like, I hope people don't forget about that play. Last couple, I talked about the guys in San Fran. If no Eli Mitchell, I'm definitely on that. And then I want to hear your take on Dallas, because you look at Dak, there's something wrong with Dak. I can't remember what I was reading that it was Steve Young in the pregame talking about. Guys like Hall of Famers like that who just know the game so much better than everyone else. He said something about, he's like, listen, Dak's hurt. That was his whole point. He's playing hurt, and I think that Dak's admitted that to an extent. But he says that's why all of his metrics have just gone, to the floor in the last 4 or 5 weeks. But you get a matchup with the second worst pass rush in the Giants, right? The second worst pressure against a really highly passive, pass blocking efficient O-line in Dallas. We got to look at Tyron Smith, make sure he plays this week. But so the matchup's wonderful. In division, they want to take care of business. He's got all the weapons. CD out of the slot now is beyond lethal. Amari's looking finally fully healthy. And Gallup would have had 100+ yards last week, if not for a 40+ yard completion call back to Holding. That was like a BS holding call. So you got all these weapons. I tend to think Gallup's a really good play, again, with this no pressure, time for his deeper routes to develop. Dak maybe getting healthier every week, just hoping that time heals things. Hopefully that's the case. Are you looking? I don't think anyone's playing anyone on Dallas this week. Are you looking at anything from them?
Yeah, Dallas is so confusing because they have 3 high-end wide receivers, and there is plenty of volume to go around for all 3, which is the weird thing. Amari Cooper, 7 targets last week. He's the one that caught the touchdown. Yep. Even with that, CeeDee Lamb, 13 targets. I believe Gallup had 9.
Yeah, dude. Look at Gallup's last 4 games. 9, 9, 8, 10. Wow.
Yeah, it's he's only played in what, 6 games this year too? So he's seeing plenty of targets, and people that think that he's a distant third, it's not correct. He is getting a ton of targets.
If they didn't do that BS holding call, he would have had 3 straight games of 100 yards or a touchdown. There's no Adoree Jackson this week on the outside, who's good and fast. He's got COVID. He's unvaxxed, so he's not going to play. There's no chance. You like the light thing. I don't know, man. I think Gallup is a nasty play this week. He's going to get 8 or more targets, you're telling me, with no Adoree Jackson, with no pressure facing them. He's got the ball skills in the end zone and up in the air ball skills better than anyone on that team, actually. I don't know. I think, of course, I love CeeDee Lamb. I love Amari. But I think for 5.5, Gallup is nice.
Yeah, the only thing that I have any concern about, do you know Amari Cooper's snap count by chance last week? Because I know that when he did play, Gallup, obviously, in the game that they played together, when Gallup came back, he saw the 5 targets against Atlanta. That was a 43-3 game. I don't think that's indicative of what will actually happen. Mm-hmm. But then Cooper was out 2 games, right? And then Cooper came back against New Orleans, but he only played 30% of the snaps.
He was sick, man. He had bad COVID. So his conditioning wasn't there. He played 34% of snaps that week. He had that 41 yard completion, I think. He looked good, but he didn't play. Last week he played 88% of snaps.
Give me Gallup.
Yeah. Dude, CD played 67 and Gallup played 82. Cooper played 88. So he was out there for every snap as far as any starters being out there, Amari last week, trending towards higher ADOT looks than CD, because now with all 3 of them playing, CD's been in the slot a lot more. Again, I like the slot looks in general more, but against a team that has no pass rush and now no top corner, outside corner, that's where you can have your big splash plays. Like I was talking for Gallup, you're right. You could say the same thing for Amari now. Obviously, Amari's just a kind of a forgotten guy, but dude, this is like my style. He's got the 10-inch hands. He's got an unbelievable skill set for running routes. He's got the mold of Keenan Allen, of all these top, Devontae, D Hop, Michael Thomas of old. So yeah, Amari Cooper's a forgotten man. No one's playing him, but you're right. That's a good signal. He went from 34% snaps to leading the team in snaps from offense, actually.
Yeah, I think going to the three of them, it's so tough because you don't want to say that CeeDee Lamb is the least likely that you're going to play of the three, but for me, it feels like Gallup is number one, followed by Amari Cooper, followed by CeeDee Lamb. I do think that any of the three are viable just because the matchup.
They force looks to CeeDee. They hand them off. They hand them the ball. I mean, they do these little bubble screens. They want to. I mean, they're obsessed with CeeDee. Dude, CeeDee made me so much money this year. We should mention Christian Kirk. I think probably right.
Yep.
AJ Green and Christian Kirk with no D Hop. Certainly
AJ Green has made a week 15 appearance on the podcast.
Dude, he looked spry last week, man. Full body extension grabs up in the air on the sideline. The Lions are a team that can't create pressure. The only guy that could, Trey Flowers, is out. This is in a dome. This is totally a spot for AJ Green to show something. I think. But with Kirk, what's so cool is that you're going to see a lot of slot looks, but he gets the deep looks, right? Mm-hmm. He's got that connection long term with Kyler, even going back to college. And Christian Kirk, man, can get loose. I mean, he had 2 catches of 40 yards or more on the showdown slate that we just played recently, with him. So I think Christian Kirk has to be mentioned. And what I'll probably finish here with Rondale Moore in that he becomes a play if there is no Connor, and even more of a play if somehow there's no Connor, no Edmonds. They'll hand him the ball. He's been so close to just busting. He almost busted through for a touchdown last week. He got kind of shoestring tackled. He had a deep catch that he just couldn't get both feet in prime time against LA. So I think Rondale Moore, I know he hasn't been doing anything, but what is he, 4K again? And for they can just start giving him manufactured looks. 4.4. If there's no Connor, if there's no Edmonds, there could be a story to tell for Rondale Moore for all these manufactured looks.
No, I completely agree with that. I like how week 2 Rondale Moore goes crazy and everyone already on the Rondale Moore bandwagon because before the season just hyped so much.
He's so
week
good.
2 he goes crazy and everyone is just going nuts. And now week 15 happens. DeAndre Hopkins is out.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Christian Kirk and AJ Green.
There you go. That's where we are. Dude, this is a good slate. Why don't you like this? This is a good slate. I like this, man.
The more we talk about it, the more I like this slate. I like it significantly more than earlier looks. I do agree. The more that we talk about this, the better it is. I do also want to, I know you talked about him a lot, but I would also like to plant my flag in the Devontae Johnson pick. Elite play this week. He just matches up very well against Tennessee. Obviously gets a ton of looks. I know every year people like to claim he's not Pittsburgh's number one.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news. He's Pittsburgh's number one. He's going to be Pittsburgh's number one for a while. Chase Claypool is not going to overtake that number one. Sorry if you don't like it. They're 2 different players. They're going to feed Deontay Johnson. This week is no exception. The matchup against Tennessee is fantastic. I think you outlined essentially wide receiver extremely well. I don't truly think that there's anyone else that I would even go over. I guess the one guy, and there's so many good plays at receiver that I don't even think that we need to spend more than a minute of you just saying no so I can get him out of my head.
Okay.
Braxton Berrios had 10 targets. 10 targets.
No.
He's just too bad, right? That's on this type of a slate. It's just too thin, right?
It is. And Miami's not horrible, from a pass defense standpoint. And I just, dude. But again, I mean, come on, you're not clicking that button.
No,
you're looking at a theoretical standpoint, and that's fine. You're looking at some ideas, but you're not clicking that button, dude. You're just not.
Listen, I agree with you. I just had to throw him out. It's not often you get 10 targets out of someone that cheap, and He's not good, and if you're going to attack Miami's defense, you should really be attacking the air yards more than you're attacking the yards after the catch, because that's more where they struggle. So I guess that kind of puts Berrios out of it even more.
I'm sure. I mean, Elijah Moore's out again, right? We know Corey Davis is out again. Yeah, but I mean, for 500 more, you could play Gabe Davis, and he won't be as chalky as he should be.
Yeah, I agree. I get even for like 100 more, you could play Laquan Treadwell, who just has more upside built into his style of play, I guess. So
my favorite thing to say about DFS is like, you don't have to play bad players. That's what's so nice about it. You can pick anyone you want within the confines of the salary. And so often when casuals send me lineups to like get my opinion, like so often there's just one really stupid bad play. I'm like, well, why is he in there? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, why? Well, why are you playing Adam Humphries? Like, you don't have to. Like, no one said you had to play him. Like, why are you doing that, right? So, yeah, man, you got to talk yourself out of some of these, Berrios. I mean, look, it already happened, by the way. You're not getting it this week, probably, right? So you already missed that. So, yeah, we'll see. Wow, Brandon Ayuk, by the way, is early look projecting like sub 3% ownership. Like, dude, I mean, come on.
Yeah, Ayuk's
from Atlanta, dead last pressure rate. He had game-winning touchdown last week, 10 targets. That's insane if he's going to be that low owned. Whoa.
It feels like people are still kind of holding on to the beginning of the season where Shanahan just benched him because he wasn't practicing hard or whatever the whole story with that odd situation was. But things evolve in the NFL. I know some people like to hold on to what they believe before the season. Others like to hold on to what happens in weeks 1 through 3. It's a full season. Things evolve literally on a weekly basis. And just because someone wasn't good at one point doesn't mean they aren't now. And, roles change, all that good stuff. But we can move to tight end where we can talk about some really good plays. James O'Shaughnessy, you get the good players.
That's the Bales play, dude. That is every pod I'm on with you. We inevitably talk about James O'Shaughnessy. It's the best. I love it.
Hey, he's good. I do think there's a lot of punt options, I guess. You have Brevin Jordan. He's 2,800. You have Josiah DeGuara. He's 2,700. Even like CJ Uzomah is 3,100. I don't know how much is O'Shaughnessy. I think he's up now, like what, 33 or something like that.
32. He's projected to be a top 3 owned tight end on the week, which is hilarious. Tight end.
I like O'Shaughnessy. In this situation, I don't think James O'Shaughnessy is like this great player or anything, but situationally, I think he's fun. Could you imagine playing chalk James O'Shaughnessy though? Especially when you're not even getting him that cheap. He's 3,200. That's
I get it, but like the problem is the whole fantasy world is obsessed with targets now. I mean, no one talked about it 5 years ago, even, believe it or not. But like, 6 targets, 6. So 6, 6, 5, 1, and 8 in his 5 games that he played this year. Okay, he's never gotten more than 48 yards, 0 touchdowns. I mean, he's horrible. The team's horrible. His quarterback's horrible. I'm happy that he's going to be chalk. I mean, that's just your range of outcomes is literally what, 3 to 7 points. Like, I love it. That's awesome, So there's so much leverage at this position. You also got, looks like some ownership floating over towards Gesicki now, with no Waddle. That's not bad. And Gesicki's at least he's an athletic freak, so I don't mind that spot. I really like I like Higbee this week. I know Higbee has not actually done that much this year. So to be fair, I just talked shit about O'Shaughnessy. Dude, Higbee actually hasn't done much either. What I like about that is the offense. I like the situation. No Odell. I like that he's like top 5 in the league, believe it or not, in red zone looks between all receivers and tight ends. I like that he does not leave the field whatsoever. And I think what we're going to see, rather than a bunch of Ben Swarniak, or however you say his name, I think they're going to run less 3 wide sets. I think they're going to go a lot of Cup, Van, and then maybe even 2 tight ends, with Higbee out there, and run some 12 personnel. And I think that, I think Tyler Higbee could get some run here. And he's only $4K, man. So like, look, I know it's real, but $800. So $800 more than O'Shaughnessy, you can get Tyler freaking Higbee. Again, has he done much? No. To be fair, he hasn't done that much. But the situation, the quarterback, everything is just so much better. Seattle's not good against tight end either. So I'm floating towards a lot of Higbee because, as I mentioned, I'm playing a lot, at least early look, a lot of Stafford. One of my favorite plays, if I can find the build kind of for it, and I think probably I'll be doing it in lineups in which I feature Davante Adams, but I like Mark Andrews this week. You talk about volume. This guy, the last 5 weeks or whatever, 11, 9, 10, 10, 8, 10 targets. That's going back 6, 7 weeks there. The volume is incredible. I almost don't care who's playing quarterback. We saw him get plenty of looks from whatever his name is. Can't think about the guy's name.
Huntley.
Yeah, Huntley. He certainly saw some looks from him, had some success. Went 115 yards and a touchdown last week, 11 catches. 11 for 11. So I think that could be, and he's only 6.4. I mean, it's not that expensive. I mentioned Kittle. Maybe the problem with Kittle is you're just buying high, man. It's like a momentum purchase. I mean, his price is just so high. So yeah, on leverage, Mark Andrews, a lot of Higbee. I looked at like Everett, but again, $500 more, rather have Higbee. I guess I know there's no Lockett now, so maybe Gerald Everett. It's nasty this week, dude. I mean, Kyle Pitts lost action to Hayden Hurst last week. I mean, Hurst snapped him. Hurst got the touchdown inside the 10. Pitts is just dust at this point. How can you play him? What about? Here's what I hadn't thought about, and I should, because he's a touchdown machine. What about Freiermuth?
I was actually, as you were talking, I was just waiting until I could say, how do you feel about Pat Freiermuth?
Yeah.
He just scores. The dude scores.
Right.
Always has. His entire career. He's at Penn State, scores. I have to assume the dude scored a ridiculous amount in high school. I have no numbers on me to back that up. I promise it's true. NFL, he scores. I believe Pat Freiermuth on the season is a tight end 1. And he didn't even play the first few weeks, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, he's got 7 touchdowns on the year. We talked about that spot against Tennessee as a pass funnel. Where they're forcing them passes at the 3rd highest rate. Yeah, I mean, you got to love that. I think it should be mentioned probably Zach Ertz with no D-Hop. We saw with no D-Hop earlier, Zach Ertz got a lot of looks. He had that huge game against Seattle. Hint, maybe we can get a little Higbee action against Seattle too. But, he went 8 for 88 and 2. Ertz, I could see Ertz getting some run. Other than that, it's like I get the Gesicki idea with no Waddle. I get it. I'm not loving much at tight end, man. I mean, Higbee, Andrews, Freiermuth. I don't know. Maybe Gesicki, but if he's gonna be chalk, I don't know. I don't know if I love that. Goddard?
Yeah, I mean,
Goddard?
Yeah. I was good. The thing about Goddard is that he just doesn't look good with Jalen Hurts. If Gardner Minshew's starting this week,
right? That's a good point, and that's possible, right? I mean, Hurts is really legit banged up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has a high ankle sprain. But they said that they do expect him to play. It's just how effective will a player like Jalen Hurts be with a high ankle sprain, right?
Yeah, right. Well, maybe he'll pass more. Maybe he'll look at it. I don't know. Coming off a bye, you'd think that he's feeling healthier. But yeah, man, all that stuff down low is just too nasty. Here we go again. At least we're nice and green here with our energy savings. But yeah, I'm not looking at CJ Uzoma. I'm not looking at guys down low like that. I'm not. I mean, I get the Brevin Jordan thing. I actually put him in a couple early build lineups, but like you look at the snap and looks. I mean, it actually is a 4-way tight end disaster.
So weird.
They actually run 4 tight ends out there, and yeah, he's getting some looks down low. But like, okay, had he not gotten those 2 touchdowns 2 out of the last 3 weeks, I mean, literally no one's talking about him if he didn't happen to get touchdowns. And touchdowns are not, predictive. They're not a leading indicator of any sorts. I mean, I don't know if I want to go down that low. Yeah, maybe they want to get some. So again, he's a younger guy. They want to get some looks out of him late in the year with not much to play for. But I don't know. This is gonna be a tough position as usual this week.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the Mark Andrews play has to be so good just because last week I loved him. He was my bold prediction. I thought that was going to be with Lamar Jackson, not Tyler Huntley. So
right,
pretty crazy that he played that well even with Huntley. But when you look at what people are going to do, if they're going to play Mike Gesicki, you move up 1,400, which isn't an insurmountable amount of money that you can't find somewhere else between multiple positions or anything. So that'll make your build kind of unique there. Or what they're going to do is they're going to move down from George Kittle, who's projecting at this point on Thursday for quite a bit of ownership.
Yep.
And then you have an extra, $900 or $1,100.
Yeah.
So you're moving off of two good tight ends that are projecting for ownership, but you're moving to another one that has as much upside as both of them, is in a good spot in a game that could realistically shoot out back and forth if both offenses are clicking.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah. I mean, Green Bay is the fourth worst team as far as target success rate against the tight end, right? So their tight end coverage has not been good this year. That's 28th in the league. Yeah, I mean, and of course, there's not much else. I mean, we got Hollywood Brown. Bateman showed some look, last week. But I think, yeah, I mean, in this spot for 6,400 with his upside in a really ugly position, if you can find the salary, yeah, I definitely like that.
You can add in on the whole Green Bay thing as well. They are the best team in the NFL in terms of points per play at home, points per play allowed at home. They're the number one ranked team in the NFL. That drops significantly on the road. Now they're traveling east to Baltimore. They get the early start time.
Yeah. And by the way, target success rate against tight ends, if you're curious, who's 32nd, dead last against tight end? Seattle. I'm telling you, dude, Higbee coming back, pissed off, dude. Rested on fresh legs. He with that false positive last week. He
forced to sit a game that he shouldn't have.
Yep, no Odell. And I'm telling you, dude, could be. I mean, I printed in week I don't know what week it was, but I had a Stafford Cup Higbee lineup. I won like 30K off of. I'm running it back. I'm going Stafford.
Doing it again.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really strong. That's good a segue into our final kind of section for this podcast of stacks that we're looking at. It seems like, we're on very similar stacks with obviously, Stafford, Higbee, and Cup being the number one. I also think that if you don't want to play Higbee for whatever reason, I do think that Van Jefferson is fine. Yep. But what other stacks overall are you looking at?
So I've been keeping a pretty tight, player pool these last, 6, 7, 8, strong weeks I've been on. And I was talking to Sam, I'm like, dude, I'll play 2 or 3 quarterbacks and run some stacks around 2 or 3. I mean, I'm keeping it high conviction, tight. So yeah, we already know Stafford's going to be one of them. I really do think I want to look to Rodgers. We love that spot in Baltimore, the big plays they give up, the kind of makeup of that game. We already like that bring back, like we talked about with Andrews. There's bring back opportunities with DK Metcalf and the Lockett, so that's appealing. I don't think I'm gonna, we'll see. I mean, a lot of it depends on injuries. I don't think I'm gonna get there with Kyler. I just don't see Kyler having to throw much. I mean, we know that. I mean, Detroit's just so god awful. Mm-hmm. Teams are passing at them at the lowest rate in the league, facing the lowest amount of pass attempts. I mean, they're just not chucking it up very much. I'd rather look for one-offs on high efficiency against a horrible defense than trying to stack up, Arizona and whenever you stack, you want efficiency, but you need some volume too. So I'll probably be fading that. I'd be more likely to play some Josh Allen stacks. It's gross, but I'm going to do a lot of beat writer reading this week. I might go back to Dak. We talked about that matchup, the second to last pressure rate in the league with Giants, this banged up backfield. We could be looking at some more pass attempts. We like the options. They're not going to be owned whatsoever. I'll be looking at some Dak stuff, but it's going to be a lot of Stafford, Rodgers. Again, I mentioned Jimmy G. If there's no Eli Mitchell, I definitely could go to that. What do you? I mean, no, that's too gross. But you had him in your core a few weeks ago with Ben. But I mean, if we love Freiermuth and we love Deontay, 10 days rest, they're going to chuck it up. Tennessee's offering it up the third most attempts per game. I mean, could you possibly play dusty-ass Ben? I mean, probably not, but we like his pieces.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me was that he was really cheap. It was against Baltimore. He was 5,000 that week. I think he's much closer to 6.
He's 5,600 this week.
56 isn't actually that bad. I mean, he scored 19 in that game. It was The reason I used him was because I was really high on Deontay Johnson, and then I also thought that the matchup was really good for Chase Claypool style, which obviously Claypool didn't do all that well, but Deontay went off.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with Ben Deontay Freiermuth if you want to do that, but I pretty much agree that for me, the two stacks that are just really sticking out at this point are Matthew Stafford and the Rams and Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I feel like my week is going to come down to which one of those two I decide to play. And then I feel like at this point, no matter what I do, I'm just going to kind of slide in either Cooper Kupp or Devontae Adams into whichever other lineup it's going to be. So essentially like four options there that I feel like I'm just plugging into my lineup.
And by the way, talking about that Dallas stack, like they had the second highest team total on the week, right? Tied with San Fran, tied with Buffalo. No one's looking at Dallas stacks really, you know. So yeah, they're big favorites on the road, divisional, you know, but that lines up to passing on the Giants. So we'll see. I could find myself with some Dak stacks, but we'll see.
I think an interesting thing for Dak, and it's because we're so worried about essentially his ankle and his legs that he hurt when he came back. He hasn't been running at all, right?
Yeah.
And then last week, he had 7 carries or 7 rush attempts. So it makes you feel more confident that he's feeling healthier himself, or he probably wouldn't have put himself in that position. I guess the downfall to that is he had 15 rushing yards. So no success at all on those carries. But I don't know. Does that make you feel like he at least feels like he's gaining health, or do you think that was just circumstance of the game?
It could have been circumstances. I mean, you know, it's hard to know without like literally viewing film on it. If they're playing, I mean, it wouldn't have been design runs. There's no way that happened.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see. I mean, they could have been facing some soft zone. He just saw some. He didn't get very far with it. Like you said, he got 2 yards of carry. But I just, again, it's so simplistic. But I just tend to think, obviously, as time goes on, you tend to get healthier. You don't get you don't get worse. You know, so I think you can just make a bet on gradual improvement. He's got all the weapons you'd ever want in a beautiful matchup. Now missing their top outside corner. They have no pass rush to speak of. I mean, it's totally possible. You know, and Vegas is well aware of the problems that they have at running back, yet they still gave him the second highest team total on the slate. So it's totally possible.
No, I completely agree with that. Before we get out of here, go ahead, Matt, give us a bold call for this week.
Oh, I always forget that you guys do that.
Every week you come on, and every week you get surprised at the end of this.
And every week I'm surprised. Am I stupid? I don't. Yeah, and I also don't want to be like all chalky about it. Like, oh, Cooper Kupp's going to score 30. Yeah, he probably will. That's like his median projection practically. Let's look at someone a bit lower owned, so it could be at least an interesting take. And yeah, you know what? Let's go with that idea of Michael Gallup. I mean, I love the talent there. I love the setup. Again, that would have, had it not been a 40+ yard completion call back to a stupid holding call, that would have been 3 straight games of 100 yards or a touchdown. And I think that if you could possibly get 25 points out of a 5.5 Gallup, it's just print city, man. So I will say Gallup with 100 yards and a touchdown. So finally putting it both together, getting 100 yards, getting a touchdown, and just loving life.
I like that because my bold prediction was also going to be 100 yards and a touchdown. Mine will be Brandon Cooks, though.
I love it. Oh, God, I love Cooks, dude. Yes.
Very similar in price this week, too, which is kind of surprising. I don't know. When I think Michael Gallup, like I just think significantly cheaper than someone like Brandon Cooks. And not that I even think that Gallup's expensive. I feel like Cooks is just underpriced there.
Yeah, 5,800 is just weird. I mean, it's just a weird price for the volume he's been getting. Again, he was stopped at the 2-inch line last week, and unbelievable matchup against Jacksonville. Yeah, it's a great call. I mean, and he'll be owned, but I mean, not enough at that price.
So no, I completely agree. That's all we got for you guys this week. Again, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. You can subscribe to the channel. If you want to turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos, just click the little bell. We will be in the comments throughout the week to answer any questions or just respond to any comments that you guys have. But thanks for watching and good luck in week 15.